We hear so many stories about workplace accidents on this program, and tonight one more. But this one's about a traumatic, fatal accident of a local garbage truck driver. DMC Waste Management driver crashes his truck in a pedestrian overpass near the end of his shift in broad daylight. A kilometer away from his destination, the driver depresses his tip to eject switch, causing the garbage box to gradually rise up. The force of the impact lifted the 50-ton overpass, causing it to crush the driver on impact. With button pressed by accident, did the driver drive his usual vehicle? Has the company done anything to take action to eliminate this accident from repeating? Tonight, all this and more we'll discuss. Noemi has the story. Over the course of our segment, we'll be hearing from the witness of the accident. We're speaking to the union member from the Waste Management Company and an external health and safety specialist.
Good evening, Peter. Thank you for meeting with us today. I understand that you witnessed the accident. Can you tell us about what you saw?
Oh yes, that is last Friday morning. It's pretty clear outside, and the driving conditions were very good, I think. And I was going to do some shopping in the mall, just in the other side of the street. And so when I was heading towards the flyover, so I saw a garbage truck just coming from the same direction. But it's about 200 feet away from the flyover. But the strange thing is that I noticed the garbage truck, the box was elevating gradually. And because the driver was so focused in the front, so I don't think that he realized that the garbage truck was raising up. And so when I was just about to climb up the flyover, I heard a thundering sound. And I saw that the garbage truck struggled with the flyover, and the flyover suddenly fell down and crashed the garbage truck and the driver.
What a terrible thing to witness. How are you reacting?
Oh my God, so it's really a horrible and a traumatic experience for me. And I feel really, really very sorry for the driver who was died in the accident. And I think there must be something wrong with the garbage company. And I hope the garbage company will conduct some thorough investigation as to why the accident was occurred. And then take some specific measure to avoid the repetition of this kind of incident. And also, I believe that the garbage company should be responsible for compensating the driver's family and also to mitigating the negative impact in the public.
Such a terrible.
When 2020 returns, we'll be speaking with Melanie, subject matter expert, who will shed some light on the health and safety standards.
Melanie, who's to blame for this tragic incident?
Well, health and safety is a shared responsibility between the employer, its employees, and the union. The general mandate of a Joint Health and Safety Committee is to ensure and improve the health and safety conditions for all the workers it represents. They evaluate risks, they investigate and keep records of incidents, they make recommendations to the employer, and they also participate in training. But within the committee, there's actually an assigned responsibility in identifying hazards, doing regular inspections, investigating accidents, putting forward recommendations, and helping to ensure that worker rights are always maintained. In the case of this very unfortunate incident, I'm inclined to say that there is a shared blame. Ultimately, it is the employer's responsibility to effectively manage health and safety issues in the workplace. However, the employee's unsafe act of attempting to open the lid prematurely, which accidentally activated the tip switch instead, combined with the failure to identify and eliminate the potential hazard itself, were all factors that led to this horrific outcome.
And how do they know if they're achieving what they set out to do?
Well, the ultimate goal in health and safety is to completely eliminate the risk whenever possible. Where full elimination is not possible, mitigating or reducing the risk is the next best option. So this is why doing a risk assessment becomes a very important step.
How does an organization perform a risk assessment?
The formula to calculate risk is as follows. Risk is equal to probability times consequence times exposure, which is expressed in a percentage. So probability is the chance or the likelihood that an event will occur. The consequences are the results or severity of the injury or incident. And the exposure is the number of times a contact is made with the event. So if we could go back in time and take a snapshot of all the factors involved in determining the level of risk on the day of this incident, it would show that the probability was medium-high for some of these reasons. The driver was asked to drive a different model truck than usual. Potentially there were quotas that had to be met, which may have made him rush. There was no actual standard operating procedure forbidding the practice of opening the lid prior to the driver's destination. And the fact that the driver was even able to activate the tip switch mechanism while the truck was in motion, this in itself was the greatest impact in increasing the probability of risk. It's evident that the consequences in this unfortunate accident were extremely high, with one fatality and having had the potential to injure many, many others, pedestrians or other drivers that may have been at the site of the accident. Exposure was medium-low, given the infrequency of the driver driving a different model truck. Overall, the risk potential was medium-high. Sadly, this could have been prevented. Conducting a risk assessment, doing an incident analysis, and then eliminating or mitigating identified hazards through the implementation of administrative and engineering controls would have reduced the potential risks, or may have even fully eliminated the potential risk of such an occurrence.
You mentioned administrative and engineering controls. What are these?
Well, an example of an administrative control would be providing training, creating policies, having standard operating procedures, whereas engineering controls, for example, address physical changes that you want to make to machinery that are aimed to eliminate the hazard. In this case, I feel that there were a number of variable controls that could have been put in place on both fronts, administrative and engineering.
Let's take a closer look at a domino theory. It states that accidents result from a chain of sequential events, metaphorically like a line of dominoes falling over. The theory examines 5 factors. 1. Background, which covers management's control, such as planning, organizing, controlling. 2. Personal defects, human factors or unsafe equipment. 3. Unsafe acts or unsafe conditions. 4. Incident, a series of unfavorable events with release of energies that can cause harm. 5. Injury, which could be a damage of property or trauma.
How does an organization perform an incident analysis?
The domino theory emphasizes that if one of the 5 factors, or dominoes, does not occur or is completely absent altogether, the probability for injury will not exist. In this case, had one of those factors not been present, this incident may not have occurred. Cooperation and collaboration between workers and employers is truly key to success in preventing work-related accidents. The Joint Health and Safety Committee's role is critical in helping to guide the employer's moral and legal obligations to exercise best workplace practices.
Sounds like an organization has many responsibilities towards its employees. What do you mean by moral and legal obligations?
Well, from a legal standpoint, Bill C-45 outlines the personal liability on an employer or even a supervisor should an incident result out of negligence. No employer or management employee wants to be held personally accountable or face potential criminal charges, and surely they do not want employees to be involved in any accident, sustain any injuries, or suffer a fatality. This ties into the moral obligation. The employer does have a moral obligation to protect its employees and provide for a safe and healthy work environment. Having a moral compass is important in maintaining a positive public image and building loyalty and trust with employees. Employers who care for their staff will see tremendous returns on investments through increased productivity, engagement, and long-term commitment to the company.
certainly sounds like it's in the best interest for an employer to take charge of these initiatives.
Oh, definitely. There are additional incentives even for employers to do all that they can to prevent injuries, diseases, accidents, or fatalities in the workplace. For example, investing in preventative measures will greatly reduce or hopefully completely eliminate the number of accidents. Reducing the number of accidents impacts positively on the company's CSST premium rates, which ultimately translates to considerable savings for companies' bottom line. Naturally, employers always want to hear those magic words.
What kind of resources are available to organizations?
Well, the CNESST has made a lot of great information available online, including the Guide to Understanding Occupational Health and Safety in Quebec. So I highly recommend for employers to familiarize themselves with the information available in this booklet.
What does DMC Waste Management Company think about all this? When 2020 returns, we'll speak to the union representative.
Hi, Alfonso. Thank you for joining us today. First, let me say and express my most sincere condolences to you and your entire organization for the loss of your colleague. How's the organization coming to terms with the accident?
Well, they're a bit shooken up, and obviously it's a big trauma for them to have experienced something like this. It's never happened before, but we're dealing with it, and we're trying to get them the help.
So internally, how are you managing the incident?
Well, as discussed in the incident report with Joint Health and Safety, shows that the truck's garbage box was tilted upward in full extension based on a witness, and the incident report does not indicate that the driver was in any way speeding or intoxicated, just performing his duties as usually, and maybe stressed for time. We don't know exactly, but we are reviewing the incident report and discussing the various hazards that may arise, and we're looking to correct them.
I understand through the incident report that there are two types of trucks on your fleet. Are all employees trained on both truck models?
Yes, we have two different types of trucks, and they have all been trained on both vehicles. The difference is that the control switch are not in the same positions. The driver, being used to driving his usual truck, thought he was switching the sliding door to open up the hatch. Instead, he accidentally pressed the lift tip switch, which allowed the truck to lift up the box and went into the overpass.
So in terms of the committee, what kinds of hazards were uncovered?
Well, we mapped out a fault tree in order to visualize and have a better understanding process of the potential hazards, and the safety hazards uncovered included the human factor. Inadvertently depressed the tip switch due to not being familiar with the controls and insufficient training. Second, not paying attention to the switch he depressed, the visibility, and the open top sliding door to the garbage truck while the truck was still in movement. Situational factor also, end of shift, potential fatigue, the driving the box elevated, driving a truck which the driver was not familiar with, and or familiar with the controls, and the time factor. He maybe have been running behind schedule and wanted to finish on time without having to do any overtime.
Earlier in our segment, we spoke to a workplace health and safety specialist who spoke to us about engineering and administrative controls. What types of controls is the organization looking at following this accident?
In terms of engineering controls to eliminate another incident, the kill switch, install a button guard on the tip switch, visual and audible notifications, and relocate controls so they are more visual to the driver. In terms of administrative controls, we discussed providing training and retraining on the hazards associated, assign drivers to the same truck so they are familiar with all controls, and periodic evaluation and feedback.
Can you elaborate a bit more on what a kill switch does?
A kill switch is a device that will cut off all energy sources to any of the switches that activate any moving parts in the truck. So if the driver accidentally presses any switch, there will be no energy. The moving part will not be activated while the truck is in motion.
Okay. So what aspects of your operations will require major change?
A number of changes can be implemented. Integrate new policies and procedures, training and retraining on policies of SOPs, and prevention of the driver being able to operate any moving equipment while driving.
These changes sound costly and complicated to implement.
No, not really. They are pretty reasonable. We have drafted a proposal which we submitted to management, and we are awaiting a reply.
A representative from DMC was unable to be with us this evening, but they've issued the following statement with regards to how they're going to help families and employees come to terms with the incident.
This is a sad day for DMC Waste Management. The tragic loss of one of our fellow colleagues is a devastation. We extend our deepest sympathies to the family and to our fellow colleagues who are all grieving. We have an employee assistance program in place to provide the much needed support at this difficult time, and we are working collaboratively with the Joint Health and Safety Committee to ensure the necessary steps are taken to prevent a reoccurrence and to keep the health and safety at the forefront of our operations.
The deceased and the family pay the ultimate price in this case. But will someone be criminally charged? Will DMC Waste Management Company ever be forgiven? 2020 thanks you for watching.